Sensele and Dr. Tyron Wright. Map that show and business recommendation made in previous week was shared. Members were encouraged to recommend plug-friendly business. Regularly weekly newsletter was shared, which highlight our essential category: education, health, legal, finance, transportation, food, and accommodation. Link was shared. Members were not need to, there's rule in the group. Ambassadors was encouraged to volunteer as ambassador of I Love Black People. Social media account was shared to group members. Members were encouraged to follow, like, comment in all platforms. Member and ambassadors was encouraged to always to attend our online Zoom event, which is today. Aim to build a global network to help and protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. COVID-19 update from Zimbabwe. Total confirmed cases 21, 1728. Recoveries is 1783, 82. Accumulative fatalities 498, report by Semelona Malanga from Zimbabwe. I am because we are.
Thank you so much, Brother Joe K. Kendiche. We appreciate you. Can you as well go on and present on behalf of Andrew Magombo? He couldn't join us on today's meeting. Can you go on and present on behalf of Malawi as well?
Thank you very much. Presentation from Andrew Magombo from Malawi on behalf of Andrew Magombo. From 24th December to 30 December, Malawi report activities. On Saturday, 25 December, we had an interactive class session with Nana H.U.R Sensele and Dr. Tyron Wright. On 26 December, we encourage to recommend Black-friendly business. On 28 December, regular weekly newsletter was shared, which highlight on 8 essential categories: education, health, legal, finance, transportation, beauty, food, and accommodation. Members were also reminded to submit their report. Link was shared. Members who had not volunteered as ambassador of I Love Black People was also encouraged to do so. On 29 December, social media account was shared and comment on all platforms. On 30th December, member was associated and were encouraged to always attend our online Zoom event, which is aimed today. Global network also protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. Members and ambassadors was asked to prepare and submit weekly report. COVID-19 update in Malawi on 30th December 2021. Cumulative confirmed cases 74,201, and now is 995. Total recoveries 60,043. New cases 201. Total deaths 2,355. New cases 5. COVID-19 vaccination. First dose AstraZeneca was 1,093,682. New is 2114. Second dose AstraZeneca 39,6082. New 1,164. Fully recovery is 1,696, 4,409. new members. Reporting from Andrew Makombo, ambassador from Malawi. Email andrewmakombo1@gmail.com. I am because we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe Kendichi, for representing on behalf of Malawi and Zimbabwe at the same time. We appreciate you. On next, we're going to have a presentation from Roland Gasami, a report for Cameroon. Roland Gasami, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Roland Gasami. You can go on and present your report.
Hello?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Hello, Black Pokemon Really Report. January 1st, 2022, period under from December 20 to December 30. Yes, we are so bad by the end of this 2 years.
Brother Roland Gasami, you are breaking up. We can't hear you clearly. Happy New Year, wishing review followed by unique by meeting around. Yes. Are you getting me? Yeah, now you are clear. Can you go ahead? But you were breaking up.
Okay. Brothers and sisters, without you, we could not achieve our goal fighting against racism and xenophobia by restoring dignity and respect around the world for the Black community.
Our apologies, Brother Roland Gasami. We couldn't hear you clearly. Allow me to go ahead and present the report on behalf of you, on your behalf. Yes, I do have the report for our brother Roland Gasam. We couldn't hear him clearly, so I'm going to present on his behalf. I Love Black People Weekly report for Cameroon, date January 1st, 2022, period under review from December 25 to December 31st, 2021. We are so proud by the end of the year, successfully year 2021 on COV conference with this 2022 Happy New Year wishes review, followed by unity around the world against xenophobia and racism. I Love Black People managers thank members and ambassadors for their attendance past years. Brothers and sisters, without you, we could not achieve our goals fighting against racism and xenophobia by restoring dignity and respect around the global for Black community. We please strongly build unity around more businesses. A recommendation for Black-owned and Black-friendly, selected in 8 categories for a safe, independent, and financial place. Through social media, we could not stop till all will be done with unity, which is the main key of love and peace, through Pan-African class sessions. By inviting more friends and family members to join the movement from iloveblackpeople.com link. COVID-19 updates in Cameroon. Confirmed cases are 109,367 with 1,851 deaths and a total of 986,281 vaccine doses has been administered. From Cameroon, here is Roland Gasam. I am because my name is Awad. I was reporting on behalf of our brother Roland Gasam, who couldn't manage to present on today's meeting because he had some network glitches. We appreciate you, brother Roland Gasam. I hope you are feeling well. I hate that you had a cold and you had the flu, but you managed to join us today. Happy New Year to you too again. On next, we are going to have Elijah Nyabuti, to present a report on behalf of our ambassador and sister Anna Karina from Mozambique. Elijah Nyabuti, can you hear me? Yes, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you, but on a public transport, I don't know if you can hear me.
Sorry, we cannot hear you clearly. Can you start again?
I'm saying kindly I'm on a public transport. I'm traveling. Oh. Hello.
I think you have network issues as well, Brother Elijah Nyabuti. I can go ahead and present on behalf of our sister, Anna Karina from Mozambique for her report. Can you make sure that you have a strong internet connection, Brother Elijah, so that we can hear you clearly on this end? Or you can try again. Yes, you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, and now
can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you clearly now.
Okay. The report is dated 27 December 2021 and 1st January 2022. In Mozambique, the weekly task was shared and the weekly newsletter was shared to the group. All social media accounts of I Love Black People were shared, and members were encouraged to attend the online Zoom event, which aims to protect people from racism and xenophobia. The COVID-19 update in Mozambique is as from 31st December 2021. The track trace test was 6,851,789. Interest test was 6,851,789. The deaths were 2,006. The recoveries were 156,507. Reporting on behalf of Anna Karina from Mozambique, I am Elijah Nyabuti because we are.
Thank you so much, Brother Elijah Nyabuti, for presenting on behalf of our sister Anna Karina from Mozambique. As well, can you go ahead and present on Kenya? If you can go ahead and present your report which you formed out.
Okay. The report from Kenya is sorry. The report is dated 18 December 2021 to 1st January 2022. On 18 December 2021, we had an interactive class session with Nana Akua Sinclair and Dr. Tyree. Members were encouraged to recommend black-owned and black-friendly businesses. Regular newsletter was shared, which highlights on our 8 essential categories. The link was shared to members to volunteer as ambassadors. Social media accounts was shared to the group. Members and ambassadors were encouraged to always attend our online Zoom event, which aims on building a global network to help and protect people from racism and xenophobia. On 25th December, members and ambassadors celebrated Christmas Day, and from 26th December 2021 to 1st January 2022, we celebrated the national holiday, which is called Kwanzaa, where we celebrate our African culture. And on 31st December 2021, members were asked to prepare and submit their weekly reports. The Kenya COVID-19 updates, the total confirmed cases were 295,028. The cumulative fatalities were 5,378. The recoveries were 252,281. The cumulative deaths were 3,030,272. The report was prepared by me and Nathan Yaputi because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Brother Elijah, for reporting the report on behalf of Kenya. We appreciate you. On next, we are going to have our brother Zoe to have a speech on today's speech about Pan-Africanism. Okay, Zoe, can you hear us? Oh, I think Zoe is having network issues. I think Zoe is having network issues. Brother Joel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Do you have the speech now so that we can present to the community?
Yes, it is from Zimbabwe, but that I read. It is from,
all right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. You can go ahead and tell.
But I have an issue here, but I think I'll continue. I see the community was good. It was good.
Okay.
Members and ambassadors was encouraged. Will you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. I was in the group of Zimbabwe, Angola, and all those groups are feeling well. Please, host, continue. I have problem on my mic.
Okay, thank you. I hope you couldn't hear me. I was on mute. I was saying, if you have questions and you can write them in the chat section, and probably we're going to have a Twitter space on Wednesday with our co-founder answering those questions and also discussing factors affecting Africa about racism and xenophobia globally. If you're on Facebook, kindly write it in the comment section. We appreciate all of you. We're going to read about UK sanctions. Scuttle ambulance is export to Zimbabwe. Yeah, this is a short news script by a local newsletter, a newsletter in Harare called the Herald. So allow me to go ahead and present on the news. Contrary to Western propaganda that sanctions do not affect ordinary Zimbabweans, a United Kingdom-based businessman was barred from purchasing medical equipment at an auction because of the punitive embargoes. The latest case is among several cases of individual Zimbabweans being denied permission to do businesses that benefit ordinary people back home. The latest case is among several cases of individual. Apart from punishing ordinary people, the sanctions that were imposed at the turn of the millennium by Western countries as punishment for the land reform program. They have constructed the country's access to multilateral and financial support from institutions like the World Bank. Under 20 years of sanctions, Zimbabwe has been forced to go it along with little assistance from foreign institutions, while some ordinary Zimbabweans have had their accounts frozen. Youth expert Mr. Joseph Nyamande recently wanted to acquire 2 ambulances at the UK auction, but was barred from making the transactions because Zimbabwe is under economic sanctions. In an interview from the UK-based Mr. Nyamande said he tried several auctions but received similar responses. Yes, I can confirm I was denied purchase based on the destination. I wanted the ambulances to go. They say the insurance does not allow them. On a different auction house, they told me Zimbabwe was on a list of countries prohibited from exporting some medical equipment. I had to change my account to look like I need the things here in UK for them to sell to me, he said. These are the words of Mr. Joseph Nyamande. According to the chat between Mr. Nyamande and the supplier from the auctioneers, UK only identified as Gareth. Zimbabwe could not get any vehicles because of the illegal sanctions. We are not allowed to sell the account holders in Zimbabwe. Do you have a UK account to buy these items? If not, we will unfortunately have to cancel the sale. Read the chat from the supplier. Conducted for comment, a British embassy spokesperson said she could not comment on individual business transactions. We cannot comment on individual business transactions. Ultimately, businesses in the UK and elsewhere make business decisions based on their own assessment of the risks involved. These measures are targeted and do not prevent trade or investment between individuals and companies in Zimbabwe, she said, contradicting herself. Both the African Union and SADC are on record calling for the unconditional removal of the illegal sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe by the Western to enable the country to realize its full potential. Sadly, the same countries that imposed sanctions refuse to acknowledge the Second Republic's re-engagement efforts and the far-reaching political reforms that have been undertaken to entrench constitutionalism. The sanctions have adversely affected Zimbabwe's capacity to respond to the current COVID-19 pandemic. SADC member states declared October 25 to unite in the call for the unconditional removal of the unjust economic sanctions that are developed. Okay, so this is the article which I have just read. It's from the Herald in original. This is an original article on the Herald newspaper, a local newspaper in Zimbabwe, about the sanctions and how they're affecting Black people in Zimbabwe who needed assistance medically. Yeah, so if you want to read more about these news about UK sanctions, which started ambulance export to Zimbabwe, I will share the link in all the groups to go through the reporter, the senior reporter. So the senior reporter's name is Joseph Matzimure, who read this original article, which I did just go through it. So if you do have questions, kindly write them in the chat section. And also if you're on Facebook, kindly write the questions in the comment section. Probably this week on Wednesday, as I said earlier, we're going to have a Twitter space with our co-founder answering those questions and also telling you more about our mobile app, which is due soon. So I urge you all of you to sign up for the wait list so that when the mobile app is launched, you will be the first people to go through it. We appreciate all of you for the effort which you offered for our love Black people in helping us to protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. We'd like and also encourage all of you to invite more friends and family members to help us to grow this global network, to grow and also to protect more Black people globally. We appreciate all of you. Yes, on for today's health lecture, we have Nana Akua, who just joined us. Nana Akua, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New 2022 to you, ma'am.
Yes, Happy New Year. Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Yvonne, Award, how's everyone? Thank everyone for joining us on this New Year's Day. I see our numbers are a little thin. People have maybe been celebrating or, or have taken a day off. But so we were not on last week because of Christmas Day, but that was our fourth week for the Pan-African Healthcare course, which was cleansing and detoxing. And so that's where we will pick up today and continue on. Hopefully, if you are in the class, you received the packet, but I will be showing that shortly. And then I think I'd like to share some additional options as well. So let me just pull up. So I hope everyone is fine. And if while I'm pulling that up, so as usual, I like to kind of get an idea of what people.
Okay, I can see your session in a picture folder. Can you change the folder?
Oh, am I already sharing? Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up. Haha. Yeah, let me get, I lost track of what I was even trying to do. So wait a minute, let me stop sharing first. Let me stop sharing and try to pull it up first. So yes, what I'd like to start with is if anyone who is on can kind of give us your idea of what it means to cleanse or detox, or what are some things that you've done in the past to cleanse your body, cleanse your mind, cleanse your spirit, the reasons that we might detoxificate or detoxify ourselves. If you have any ideas or input, if you can type those in, that would be great. I'd love your feedback. And let's see if I'm able to. The process of removing toxins from the body. Great, excellent. Absolutely, the objective is to be healthy. Thank you. Any other ideas of why we need to detox or some ways in which to detox? Thank you for the suggestion on spiritual cleansing. Everyone can see that in the chat. And that's good to point out, and that's why I wanted to list it that way. A lot of what we'll talk about today will be about physical cleansing or detoxification. However, every aspect is important. So we often have to set aside time and implement rituals that will not only cleanse our physical bodies, but our spiritual bodies as well. So I think I have. Okay. So hopefully you can see the slide here on the screen. So this
is, you can see it.
Thank you. So we will primarily focus on the slide here for today's lecture. And this is in several parts. So we'll basically discuss what it is to detoxify, what methods we might use in order to cleanse or detoxify, different paths of elimination, how to cleanse or detox internally, how to cleanse externally. And then of course, were we in person, there would be some other projects, but we can certainly talk through those as well. So the first slide here, this is basically a general definition. I pretty much use detoxification and cleansing interchangeably. However, I provided sort of two distinct definitions. So detoxification, the process of removing a poisonous or harmful substance from the body, or the neutralization or mitigation of its effects, right? So detoxification, we're pretty much trying to remove toxins, poisons, harmful substances, right? Or at the very least, mitigating the effects of those substances, neutralizing those. One good example of that is activated charcoal, for example. So we know that someone who has taken in some kind of poisons in the body, eaten something that didn't agree with them, and you go to, say, the hospital, or even if on your own you have activated charcoal powder or tablets or capsules. The point in sending that in through the body is to neutralize the effects of those toxins. So if it's a particular poison, or if it's just a food that doesn't suit your body, which still renders it a poison, right? That charcoal is acting as a neutralization of the poisonous substances, okay? Same with many herbs and other things that we might do. Cleansing has a slight variation, right? Where cleansing is the process of making something thoroughly clean, ridding the body of an unhealthy, unnecessary substance, cleansing by washing. So cleansing by purification, cleansing by washing, using water, using herbs, using foods, using prayer, meditation, fasting, using different rituals, avoiding people who are negative, or fasting from talking, fasting from negative people. So they're all different ways to kind of cleanse or purify the body. So I will pretty much use these terms interchangeably, but just providing here the actual definitions. What I should also point out is when we do some type of cleansing or detoxification, know that there are certain symptoms or side effects of detoxification. These are normal, some are unpleasant, but usually are mild. Just depends on what level of toxicity we're talking about and what exactly we're cleansing or detoxing from. But know that there are common side effects to cleansing. Body aches, headaches, body odor, bad breath, weakness, purging, skin rashes, fatigue. These are all very common symptoms of cleansing or detoxifying your bodies. Also, there are different methods in which to cleanse. We may use herbs, we may use homeopathics. You may cleanse using a detox diet, fasting, detox foot baths or full body baths, different types of massages or body work can be done to cleanse or detox the body, as well as skin brushing, right? And so here is a mixture. Some of these are internal methods, some of these are external methods of cleansing. Okay, so let's talk about some of the paths of elimination. A lot of times when people think about cleansing, they only focus on the obvious, what we hopefully every day evacuate our bodies through, the colon, right? However, we know that there are other paths of elimination. There are other routes in which waste is removed from the body. So in this regard, when we talk about paths of elimination, we're talking about the colon, the lungs, the kidneys, the liver, and the skin. And all of these are important, not just the colon, because when any one of these paths is clogged or overworked or toxic, we know that it's putting stress on the other paths of elimination. So of course, a healthy colon is essential. We have to move our bowels every day, at least twice a day. But we know that when that doesn't happen, we know that waste will attempt to get removed or remove itself through other means, right? Or if we move our bowels every day, however, we're constantly getting skin rashes or having other skin eruptions, abscesses, cysts, boils, things of that nature. That's a sign that the skin is overworked. And so we need to put some extra work into incorporating some blood purifying or some skin cleansing rituals. Same with the liver. If we know that we use a lot of over-the-counter medications, or we're on some prescription medications, or the obvious, people only think about this, but this is not the only way to intoxicate the liver. But of course, people who overindulge with alcohol, for example, or certain conditions that you may have, hepatitis and things of that nature. We know that there are different reasons that the liver may become overworked and need a detox. Or just the example I just gave, if we know that we have kind of chronic skin issues, that's also a sign that specifically not only the skin, but that the liver is overworked. If we have certain conditions like hypertension, or we get chronic urinary tract infections or bladder infections, or we know that we don't drink enough water and get enough fluids in the body, or we have some issue with urination, we know that the kidneys may need some attention. So, and let me not forget, in the midst of these couple of years of COVID, we know that the lungs in many cases get compromised. Even prior to these last couple of years, folk who work in the environment, who come in contact with toxic gases that we get into the lungs, and of course those who smoke, but different reasons that we know we may need to give some extra attention to cleansing and purifying the lungs, right? So all of these are the paths of elimination and reasons or ways that we intoxicate these paths of elimination. And we know that there are ways in which we can cleanse. We might do juicing, we might do foods, we may do herbs. So there are different ways in which to address cleansing of these paths of elimination. So let me, which I was trying to focus on earlier, let me, if I can pull up my, I know you're just gonna see my pictures, I guess that's fine. One day I'll do this smoothly. You'll just have to bear with me. There's a little handout that I want to show. Oh wait, somebody left me a good response. It looks long. Let me get to it and read that in just a second. Looking for. I'm still not easily finding this thing. Why is this happening? Oh, there it is. I don't know, maybe you see it. Do you see Juice Q, or do you still see my?
Yes, we are seeing Juice Q's, but you haven't clicked on it yet.
Oh, I did on my screen. Okay.
Okay, so we can't see it on our end as a full screen.
Wait a minute. One day I'll get it together. Got it. I got it, right?
Yes, yes. Now,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so one of the ways to cleanse, or one of the internal cleansing methods, is juicing. Okay, so we know that we should definitely use food as our medicine as often as possible. And we know that there are different conditions, very specific conditions, or even if we are talking about the general cleansing and detoxification. I came across this, and usually on Facebook, I'll save whatever, health flyers or pieces of information like this that just kind of clearly and succinctly highlights different things that I find helpful. So we know that juicing is using an actual juicer, not smoothies or blending the machine where it separates the juice of a fruit or vegetable from its pulp or its fiber-rich part, right? And of course, there's argument as to which is best, getting the whole, fruit or vegetable, or just extracting the juice. Of course, there's even recipes, cookbooks to where and how you can use the pulp if that becomes an issue for people and feeling that you're wasting something. But I find juicing to be really easy, an easy way to take in nutrients very easily and quickly. Sometimes people find it an arduous task, right, to consume the whole fruits and vegetables at the amount that you may need it, whereas you can use one glass of juice and have several pieces of fruits and vegetables at one time. Sometimes we have to kind of, I won't say play those tricks with ourselves, but whatever works to get the most nutrition in our bodies at one time is what I suggest we do. Not that whole foods are not the best option, but juicing or juice cures is one perfect option. It's easy on the digestive system. You're not having to chew and digest whole or solid foods, and you're still getting all of the nutrition from the fruits and vegetables. So here is just a list of different juices you can use for different conditions. So if we were fighting a cold, we know that carrots, pineapples, ginger, and garlic are excellent for colds. If we were combating depression, carrots, apples, spinach, beets, and noni, which is a fruit. I don't know how easy it is to find the actual noni fruit. Noni juice became very popular. Oh, time is rolling. It's probably been 15 years or so ago. Don't know if we can now easily find the fruit, but there were several companies that were selling the noni juice, which was really great for ADD and ADHD and some other things like that. So not surprised that it would be helpful for depression. Headaches, apples, cucumbers, kale, ginger, celery. These are some good foods for this. If we're talking about managing our diabetes, I don't know that I would really do carrots. Again, I did not create this list. If I were making this list, I would probably do more. We know that string beans or green beans, we know that Jerusalem artichoke, we know that these are the vegetables that are best for diabetes. Carrots, we know, is a root vegetable. It's a starchy, high calorie vegetable, not one that we would want to overdo with diabetes. So I'm going to just say, in my humble opinion, I would not overdo it with carrots if we were trying to treat diabetes. The spinach and celery, I can go along with. I would probably more so do some kale and other greens, some celery, cucumber, the string beans, Jerusalem artichokes. These are going to be better options for managing your blood sugar. Ulcers, cabbage, carrots, celery. These are good options. Some people use potatoes for ulcers and stomach issues. Asthma, carrots. Oh, so these people like carrots. I think carrots is in everything. I'm just noticing that. Carrots are great. I don't know if they're that great. But asthma, carrots, spinach, apple, garlic, lemon. These are some options. The high blood pressure, beets, apples, celery, cucumber, ginger. These are good. We know that beets is another root vegetable that we wouldn't overdo if we have blood sugar issues or diabetes. However, beets are excellent for the blood, for the liver. So we know that it's highly nutritive and can be beneficial with high blood pressure. So that is true. And probably my next favorite with high blood pressure is celery. You can't get enough celery. So definitely implement those two, if nothing else. Arthritis, carrots, celery, pineapple, lemon. Yeah, so my note about arthritis is definitely the pineapple is excellent because we know it has natural bromelain, which we know is an anti-inflammatory. You would probably maybe do this sea vegetable, which you'll find usually in like an Asian market called sea cucumber. We know that this is good anti-inflammatory foods. Celery, yes, great. And I would say with arthritis or joint pain, I think one of the other notes is to not juice your what we call nightshade vegetables. So these we know usually or can cause inflammation. So just my side note with that, if you are a potato or tomato or bell pepper or eggplant, or even tobacco is a nightshade, but nightshade vegetables is something usually people, it's recommended that people avoid if they have arthritis or joint pain. Kidney detox, carrots. I'm so tickled with these carrots showing up in everything. I'm on the thicker side. So if I'm honest with you, I don't do a lot of carrots or root vegetables. If you get into juicing and your favorite vegetable or your juice is carrot, you're going to be counterproductive because it is going to give you some extra calories. So I just give you that word of caution. I provided this list and now, but I still just want to give you that little cautionary note that maybe not everything should include carrots in your juicing. But kidney detox, definitely we know watermelon, cucumber, cilantro. Cilantro is really great for heavy metal toxicity specifically. But yes, but we also know that other diuretic foods like celery, ginger would even be good to maybe add, but these are all good options. Parsley would be a good thing to add into your juice. Yeah, so these are good options for kidneys. Let me skip down. I thought one that was interesting that I don't usually see, this fruit, this banana, strawberry and pear juice for stress. I think that's helpful. I think a lot of times we overlook our emotional selves when we're doing some kind of cleansing or detoxification. If you are stressed, this I think is an excellent option for you. Constipation, definitely any high fiber foods are going to be good. Apples, pears, berries, the cabbage, all of these I think would be fine. Hangover, memory loss, nervousness. I thought also another interesting one to include here. I think that can be helpful. A lot of times we have a lot of nervous energy or anxiety. Celery, carrots, pomegranate, these are good options for you. So just wanted you, and hopefully if you don't have the handout, and these are not actually in the handout. So if you hopefully got to take notes, if you are not otherwise able to save this that I'm sharing here. But just some notes here on juice cures. Yeah, too orange. Yeah, okay. Put an eye, or they put an eye there. Okay. Yeah, they overdoing it with the carrots. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Lord. Right. Yeah, if we had known all this information years ago, I'm telling you. But we know it now. And once you know better, you can do better. So thank God we're all here and learning this information now, even if we didn't have it years ago. And even if it's too late for some things that maybe we've battled with in the past, at least we can now educate others about it. So it's still good to get the information. So yes, I will give my email. And I'm not even familiar with this. So I'm assuming this is a type of clay, Brian. Okay. I'm wondering if this, I'm not familiar with this type of earth. I'm wondering, is this similar to like a bentonite clay or something? But thank you for sharing that information. Or if, and I can look it up, but I'll have to write that down because I'm not familiar with that. And there are tons of ways in which to cleanse, for sure. And the main thing is finding what works best for you. Educational and training missionaries. Alamami. Where are you from? So, okay, I don't know if all of you read the comments as we're going along. So, I only go to remote areas. I'm glad that somebody phrased a question about taking this information to like remote parts of Africa. And I've only been to Ghana, but I have made it a point to go to only rural areas where you won't have these big churches that will give information or food or medicine or assistance for folk who take on their religious beliefs. If you're really going to help, you're going to help. So I tend to go to rural areas. So I like how you worded the question. And yeah, most places that I go to are remote. They may not have internet, barely have a phone. Maybe they're sharing it amongst each other or whatever. That's a whole nother issue that we can certainly address. I'm all for educating folk. I'm all for being hands-on. Oh, okay, that's a lot of shifts. All right, thank you for the information. And you're in Sierra Leone. Okay, great. Thank you all for the information. Okay, so let me get back to, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Look, you see I got lost for a second into the comments. Ward looking at me like, okay, lady, you reading all the comments. Now, that's not what you're saying, right? So I appreciate the feedback. Okay, great. Yeah, y'all saying a whole lot. Okay, so let me go to the juice cures. So in addition to and how you use charcoal. So activated charcoal, for example, you are basically using it to cleanse your body of substances that have not been that are not of use to you. So that's usually how you can certainly take it just as a cleansing, not necessarily as your only means of cleansing or detoxification, but definitely if you know you've eaten something that is not good for you, that has caused some kind of negative reaction or response, definitely that is something that you can use. And if you get the activated charcoal food grade, usually here we find in like a health food store or something, right? And you literally can just take it right out of your hand, or you can add it on top of food. If you get it already in capsule form or tablet form, fine. You take a few capsules every few hours until the toxins are neutralized. Usually what that means is you've sort of passed it through your body. Of course, your bowels will look really black. They'll literally look black, right? Yeah, let me tell you, a lot of things sent to Africa are contaminated. Definitely. I'm not surprised to hear that at all. But how demonic to send mosquito nets that are contaminated. However, this is what we're dealing with. So this is why this type of movement is necessary, right? Because we have to have people that we know and trust, that we know are looking out for our benefit and not sending things that are supposedly intended to heal us, but are more so ruining us or attempting to destroy us. So this is why we're here. So let me put my email here, because if you want to send me something, I won't get it if you send it just to the chat, because once I log off, it's lost to me. I'm sure maybe the administrators have it somewhere, but I don't. So if you have a request for the packet, or if you want to send something, my email is going to be the best way to send that to me. So let's move on. Let me get back into the handout. The other thing I want to make sure that I don't overlook or that I don't miss is talking about how to topically or the external means in which to detox. Sharing. So skin brushing, I mentioned earlier, but I sometimes kind of get off and don't focus on some of the external ways of doing it. So we know that different types of massage, especially things like shiatsu massage or acupressure, lymphatic massage. We know that these are very specific body touch therapies that can break up stagnant energy, that can increase circulation, that can move out toxins or blockages in the body. So I definitely suggest looking into those kind of physical touch therapies that can help detox the body. We know that there are baths that can be used. So whether we're doing any types of salts, clays, herbs, essential oils, there are many different ways in terms of cleansing the body through different baths that we can implement. We know that hydrotherapy or water therapies internally and externally. So we talked about baths, but then in terms of internal colon cleansing baths, so hydrotherapy or colon hydrotherapy, we know that there's ways to externally cleanse the colon with water. And then, of course, specific types of foot detox. There are what's called like magnetic clay baths, where there's a combination of different types of earth clays and herbs, where you kind of creating sort of a mud bath, quote unquote, to draw out toxins from the feet. And then again, different combinations of herbs and salts and essential oils that can be used in foot baths. But back to the skin brushing. So we know that our skin is our largest organ. And we know that a lot of times the skin is showing us that there's a problem in the body when we have these different outbreaks, rashes, skin conditions. And so when we are doing a cleanse, it's important to remember to detox or cleanse our skin with brushing. Dry skin brushing, you use a natural bristle brush. Usually this is a brush that you might typically use in the shower. However, you keep it dry, and it is only used dry on the skin that is also dry. And you are using it to get all of the excess dead skin cells off of the body. And usually you can simply get a, this is not what I bought this for, but I tend to keep it here in this room. So every week I end up pulling this out. Doesn't have to be this type of brush. Could be one with a handle, but you pretty much are just brushing your skin towards your heart, or some people say towards the center of the body, towards the torso, and just smooth, straight brushes throughout the body, across the back, up the legs, up the arms. And this is enhancing our lymphatic system. This is improving our circulation. This is helping to allow our blood to circulate better. So skin brushing, and of course, like I said, the obvious is getting rid of any dead dry skin cells on the body as well. So these are all important external detox methods that we can use. Back to some of the internal methods. We know that there are different foods that can be used to cleanse, especially if you're doing, say, a raw food diet, if you are, in fact, doing juice fast, or you're just doing an elimination diet, or even what we call a mild food diet. So in some cases, say you are not able to fast with just juices, or you're not interested in doing a raw food diet. You may simply say, I'm going to do what's called a mild food diet, where I'm still kind of doing maybe 70% raw or low temperature, foods, and then some soups or stews or raw fruits, maybe even smoothies. But this chart, even though, again, I don't agree with everything on the chart, they have some meats and things listed, which I feel like if you're doing a detox, those things won't have any real place. But it's just giving you some of the food categories of some of the fruits and vegetables that you might use if you're doing a detox. The handouts here also give additional information as to what certain foods may do for the body. So we know that in terms of cleansing the liver, foods like grapefruit, beets, carrots, green tea, apples, walnuts, arugula, limes, lemons, garlic, turmeric. We know that these foods are excellent for the liver. I mentioned cilantro earlier already as it pertained to heavy metals, but we know that it also is just specifically good for the liver. But we know that if we work in the environment with certain types of metals, or we have mercury amalgam in our fillings, or certain makeups that women use, certain newsprint, or different things, batteries. There's so many different things in the environment that we come in contact that will have metals in them. So cilantro is a good option when cleansing the liver or just doing a cleanse from environmental toxins, especially heavy metals. We know that lemon water or even lime water is even better. We know that that's excellent for the liver. Avocados, we know, are also specifically good for the liver. We know that it gives us our good fats or our essential fatty acids. Beets, I've mentioned earlier. So these handouts just give a little more detail as to how it can be used for our cleansing regimens. This is a 3-day cleanse for the liver. Just this is not a good copy. I think I make it a little bigger. Yeah, still not good. And I also don't have my glasses on. But this is a 3-day cleanse where it just gives you an idea of what to drink in the morning, what to consume at breakfast, lunch, dinner, for afternoons, starting off with like lemon water or lime water, and things of that nature, making sure that you're taking in those liver-friendly foods throughout the day. Then another recipe here for a liver cleansing juice. Again, juicing through a juicer. You would use a half of beet root, a carrot, a half of lemon. I don't leave the lemon peel on. That's up to you. There have been different arguments about the lemon peel. I always thinly peel the lemon, leaving that white fleshy part, but taking that waxy actual outer peel part off. 1 cucumber and 1 inch of ginger. So this is excellent for cleansing the liver. And let me just say, we know that whatever cleanses the liver, we know cleanses the blood, right? And so we know that if there's a skin issue, the way that we address the skin issue is through the liver and through the blood. So liver cleansing herbs, or blood purifying herbs, skin cleansing herbs, these are all one and the same. And I know I said herbs, but even if you're talking about recipes like this, but we know that the herbs that we would use if we were doing a liver cleanse, like milk thistle or dandelion or yellow dock or burdock, and I'm sure many others. These are herbs that will also heal the skin as well as purify the blood while cleansing the liver. They're all one and the same. The recipe here, just another recipe. This one is more like a smoothie that you can make into sort of a little frozen drink. This combines celery and cucumber along with pineapple, lemon, parsley, and ginger. And then turmeric, we mentioned earlier, but this is just a more detailed handout about the benefits of turmeric. It detoxifies the body, boosts immunity, protects liver tissue, cleanses and purifies the blood, eases symptoms of coughs and colds, and improves circulation, improves skin, and prevents internal clotting. Okay. Some kidney cleansing recipes, some of the stuff we've already mentioned, and that I've already mentioned in terms of diuretic types of things when we're talking about the juicing handout, but parsley, cucumber, celery, lemon, these are all going to be really great for cleansing the liver, the kidneys. In terms of the colon, these are a few herbs and foods that are great for colon cleansing. Flax seeds, alfalfa, spirulina and wheatgrass, chickweed, cascara sagrada, fennel, aloe, peppermint, mango, probiotic yogurt, fermented foods like kefir, organic fruits like your apples, grapes, papaya, kiwi, things like that. And again, you always want your really high fiber foods. I don't think grapefruit is listed here, but I would even put grapefruit, because what we know is even in colon cleansing formulas, to get natural pectin or fiber, a lot of formulas will go to, say, apple pectin or grapefruit pectin, those high fiber foods, not the more sweet fruits. So while pineapples and grapes can be great, they still are a little towards the sweet side and not as high in fiber, or they still have fiber, but because they're sweet and a little more starchy and high calorie, not always the best options. I feel the same way about mango. Mango is still on the sweet side, even though it can have a laxative effect. All of these things you have to consider depending on your situation. So if you know you're prone to diabetes or your blood sugar being off balance, there are just certain things that you wouldn't go to. You would pick other options, just with the example I gave of the carrots earlier with diabetes. Same thing with, say, a mango or a pineapple. you would more so do something like an apple or a pear. And while we're talking about our stool or our bowel movements, I include this chart because as you are cleansing your colon, as you are monitoring how often you are eliminating, what you also need to evaluate is how your stool looks. So we know that the extremes, type 1, where it's very hard formed pieces, or type 7, where it's completely watery and loose. We know, of course, that these are not our ideal options, right? So what we really want to attain is more like a 5 or 4. So you want it to be soft, soft to release. It kind of breaks up as it passes out of your body and hits the toilet. And that's how you would, make note of the consistency of it. But you want to make sure that in addition to having regular bowel movements, that the consistency is also correct. Because even though you may go every day, if it's still really small, hard pieces that are hard to pass, you still can be constipated. Okay, so a lot of times people just assume that constipation is the absence of going. Constipation still can be having bowel movements, but it being really hard and dehydrated and hard to pass. That's still constipation. Okay, so let me, and this page is really more to serve as sort of a overview. So what I suggest always is that you go through, and as a way to recap for yourself, what did you learn about the liver? How can you detox the liver? What smoothies, what foods, what herbs, what things can be done about detoxing the skin? We talked about different baths. We talked about skin brushing. What is used for kidney detox? We've talked about lemons and cucumbers and celery. And we talked about several herbs and foods for cleansing the colon, like fennel and Cascara sagrada, and mangoes and apples and grapes and things of that nature. And in terms of lungs, we talked about the need to do, well, actually, maybe we didn't, but the need to do deep breathing exercises and to focus on cleansing the lungs, especially if you work in certain environments. And we had employed some of the breathing techniques that one could use. We talked about, I think, well, I guess that would have been 2 weeks ago when we talked about relaxation techniques. But know that there's conscious breathing to where we can strengthen and detox our organ muscle, the lungs, right? And so whether it's, really deep, slow breaths, or whether they're fire breaths. There's all kinds of breath work or different types of breathing exercises that one can implement. So feel free to look into those. I'm a little congested today, so I'm gonna pass on. I'm gonna pass on that, then I'll have to get some tissue. So the next section, and the handout here where I talked about, I'm gonna pull up the other one with the glycemic index, but let's move to the one about the hypertension. I really like this handout. And so these issues don't deal specifically with cleansing and detoxification, but I included them here at the end of the class because so many of our people are conflicted with hypertension and diabetes that I wanted to make sure to give this information, and strictly for informational purposes, because if you are suffering with any of these issues, this is something you will want to be under the care of a healthcare provider, and get whatever assistance, whatever route you choose. If you do medication, if you do the natural route, my role is not to advocate for one or the other, but to give you information. And so I found this chart to be really helpful in terms of letting you know what normal blood pressure should look like, right? What's low, what's high, what the different stages are. So I really love this handout that I've had for many years, because it gives you the categories. So at a certain rate, you're at the mild level. At another rate, you're considered moderate. Then there's severe, then there's very severe, right? So this just, as someone who would check maybe their blood pressure every day, you can monitor like, okay, cool, this is working. Or even if you're on medication, oh, wow, okay, the medication is really working because now it's gone down from this stage to that stage. Or you may, even if your doctor hasn't determined that you have an issue, you might say, well, hey, I monitor this on my own, but I'm concerned because of X, Y, and Z. You know, so this is just more so for your information to have at least a basis of which to work from, so that you can go and be an informed patient, right? And you can go with your own information to say, well, this is what's been going on with me, and I'm usually at this range, or this is what's normal for me, because they're once a year seeing you for 5 to 15 minutes. They're not going to really know your life and your situation, but you will go armed with the information. So the other thing I like about this handout is that it also gives you recommendations, or just, I won't even say recommendations. It gives you information on what are typically the foods, the minerals, the herbs, the vitamins that one might consider using if blood pressure is an issue. So the no foods they have here: high salt foods, medium salt foods, saturated fats, hydrogenated oils. These are foods, of course, that you would avoid if you're having any sort of issue with hypertension. Your yes foods, these are foods that are high in K and calcium, things like apples, avocados, bananas, broccoli, fish, grapes, oats, orange juice, water, right? And then your different types of supplements they have listed here as well, where they would recommend CoQ10 and hawthorn berry and flaxseed oil, fish oil, calcium, magnesium, potassium, vitamin C, vitamins D, E, B complex, things of that nature, right? So it gives you sort of a basis of what to possibly supplement your diets with, right? And then also different things that you might be able to do to lower your blood pressure. Things like quitting smoking, reducing your weight, exercising, eating low salt diets, low protein, no caffeine, mild sedation, or relaxing, maybe is a better way to say that. Getting sufficient sleep and rest, not oversleeping, things like that. So this handout I thought was just really helpful. It's just information in terms of how to monitor your blood pressure, and maybe some things that you can take charge of yourself. I'll go back up really quickly, and I'll share. Just know that there's a better glycemic index, but basically know that there are foods that contain starch, which will elevate your blood sugar, right? These are foods that contain a certain level or a certain number on the glycemic index. And so there is a chart where basically you're able to monitor which foods are low, high, or moderate starch foods. And so this just gives you an idea of what foods you can kind of consume freely and what foods you probably need to avoid, especially if you're having issues managing your blood sugar. So I'm just trying to read through, yeah, so some of this stuff, all this. All right. So yes, if you email me, I can send you the handout. I have put my email in the chat. I think a couple of people are asking for that. And I don't think there are other questions, but yes. So earlier when I mentioned certain fruits and vegetables that are just not best, if you are in fact watching out for your blood sugar, if you're diabetic, this is a chart that's good for that. If you happen to email me and you want to have even a better chart or a more updated chart that I can send, this one I think is a little outdated and I find some of the numbers to be off. But typically what you want to do if you're diabetic, just as one of your precautions, not the only thing you do, but in terms of how you eat, you want to make sure that you are following the glycemic index and that you're eating foods that are 70 or below. These are the foods that are either moderate or low glycemic foods, and they won't spike up your glucose. And your pancreas won't have to kind of create enough, insulin to kind of balance it back out, okay? So this is one thing that you can do is study this chart, use those foods as guides, or these numbers or this chart as a guide, I should say, as to which foods that you would eat. So again, if you have any questions about the handouts in general, or if you want the handouts or the new glycemic index chart, feel free to email me. So if there are no other questions, I think that I started a little early, Award, or?
Yes, I can hear you.
Did we, I know they asked me to start a little early. I don't remember if I started earlier or am I still on the same time? What are we?
Yeah, we're still on the same time, but Dr. Wright is already with us. I don't know if you are done, I can let Dr. Wright to start off.
Yeah, I think I don't think anyone else had any other questions. There's definitely some stuff here that's more information stuff, not really questions. So I won't bother to respond to some of that. I'll put my email again in. Next week we will be in our new cycle. So we'll be talking about some of the concepts of holistic healing and some of the modalities. We'll talk about herbs and we'll talk about vitamins and minerals and nutrients, stuff like that. So Nana Akua. One. Yeah, so yeah, I think that I am done. I know Dr. Wright's on, but I don't know if she's ready, so I hate to stop early. I mean, we kind of always kind of sit on early, but might be doing other things. So hopefully, Dr. Wright, you're ready. I'm not sure. But
you can keep going. You can keep going.
Oh, okay. Okay, very well. So let me, so the other handout that I was gonna show, I now then have time to pull that up, I think, right? So. Let me share my screen again. Oh no, and of course it would not do it. Just when I'm trying to do something extra, right? Okay, yeah, so never mind. So let's do a couple of breathing exercises. We should have done that, right? Well, I should be pleased with this. I think my concern, which I probably really needed, but this is one of those occasions where you don't want to do something that you know would be helpful for you, right? So if you're congested, this is the ideal thing for you, is to really focus on your breathing and really exercise your lungs, even if you'll bring up some mucus or some phlegm that maybe you don't want to. However, you always want to bring that up so that you clear the pathway and that sort of thing. So we've talked about fire breaths before, if you remember. Right? Do we remember? How many people have done any of these since we last talked about it? And it's been maybe over the last month. So I think we've done them a couple of times, right? So we know that this really strengthens our lungs. We know that this is one of the best ways to detox our lungs. Now, another excellent thing is steam saunas, or even the old school, putting the boiling water, you know, from the pot, putting your towel or blanket over it and inhaling the steam or the vapors. All of these are ways to really help enhance your breathing, especially if you have a cold or a flu or worse, right? A good way to really cleanse out and really open up your airways is to really kind of sometimes force it open and force the airways open. And so breath work is an excellent way to do it, but also steam saunas or steam inhalation. They even have these little devices that people use for facial steams, but that also is excellent for opening up your airways as well. So you may buy one of these little things. There may be $20 on Amazon that people mainly use for steam facials, but you can use the steam to really help assist with your breathing. So that's one little tidbit. And in addition to clearing any congestion, it can also be really helpful for coughs. So those are things that I wanted to kind of add as I'm just thinking about how to use breath work and how to cleanse the lungs and how to really be of benefit rather than just sort of sitting and waiting for something to clear up. And as it relates to the lungs, and I didn't mention some of the herbs that are really great for the lungs. So we talked about the lungs, but I probably didn't give as much information as I could have. Mullein, wild cherry bark, horehound, those are ones I can think of right now, but those are some herbs that are really good also for detoxing and cleansing the lungs, okay? So we've dealt with lungs, liver, kidneys, colon, and skin today. And so I've tried to give not only foods, but herbs, as well as some other external therapies or methods in which to heal all of those paths of elimination. And so know that cleansing and detoxification is necessary. It will give you some side effects that are sometimes unpleasant, but these are very common, very natural, and mostly harmful. So just know that cleansing is necessary. Every day we go about eating foods that we know may not be the healthiest for us. We're in environments or in settings, or we come in contact with contaminants that we know are not the best for us. Sometimes we're in situations or around people, or we have negative thought patterns, right, that we know are not the best for us. So we have to do something tangible to cleanse our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. So that's what we focused on today. I hope you got some good information from that, and I look forward to seeing you back next week. So as always, I bid you good health and peace.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. On next, we're going to have Professor Wright on today's lecture about Pan-Africanism. Welcome, Dr.
Yes.
Tyrone Wright. Happy New Year to you.
Yes, hello. You'll see me momentarily. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Can everybody
we
hear me?
can. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, wonderful. You'll see me momentarily. So welcome back, everyone. Happy New Year around the world. I hope everyone had a safe New Year and made it back here to us. I wanted to start with just a little clip that I ran across this morning with regard to what unification of African people can mean to us. I'm going to share my screen, but hold on. I have permission to share my screen, right?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to share something in a second.
Right. All right.
Okay, give me one moment. All right. Oh, okay. Well, just to frame, we have a lot of reading to cover to wrap up because you had the previous week's readings. But okay. But I wanted to start off with this. This is a great Black psychologist, the late Dr. Amos Wilson. Some of you have heard of him. Many of you may not have heard of him. He's an ancestor now. And I'm going to share just a clip on his lecture on Black male and female relationships. However, this applies to us all in terms of our relationships worldwide, okay? So I ran across it this morning before class and thought to myself that I had better just use this to frame the work that we're doing and just get us right back on the track for the new year. Hold on, let me turn that alarm off. I'm doing this from my device, so please excuse me. And you'll see me momentarily as well to accompany the lecture. But this is a clip from Amos Wilson and that I'm going to share. Let's see.
The love that we have for one another is the greatest threat
Can you hear it?
to the people who rule over us.
There you go.
Yes, you can hear.
And it is necessary for those people who rule over us and who rule over African people the world over. If those people are to stay in power, they must destroy our ability to love each other in a healthy sort of way.
Okay. All right. I'll stop there. So you heard that, right? Everybody heard that? Could you hear it, moderator?
Yes, I could hear it.
Okay, good.
I think everyone was hearing it as well.
Okay, good. So what he said was basically our ability to love each other has been, and you all are a part of I Love Black People, we have been robbed of our ability to love each other. And that is the only way external forces can have an advantage over us. If they can kill our ability and desire to love each other, to be kind to each other, to make space for each other, to respect each other's humanity. And so Amos Wilson reminds us of that in that lecture. It's a full lecture. Maybe I'll post it in the group so that you can see it in its entirety. But I just wanted to put that out there as a reminder for the new year as to the work that we're doing and the work that we continue to do even after this course is over. Okay. Just to frame the discussion around Pan-Africanism, unity, and those who came before us in terms of, just getting my camera together, those who came before us in terms of doing this very work. As I've said in the previous classes, we're on a continuum. And so we should never think that the work we're doing is specific to us, or it's the first time that this work is being done. It's not. So we're on a continuum. And all right, my camera's not so great today, but I'm hanging in there with it. That we're on a continuum, and that this is not the first time that we have embarked on this work. And so you had a lot of reading. I'll jump right into that. You had a lot of reading. Some of the reading was from various people. Garvey, Du Bois. I was a little sad the week before because although I know many celebrate Christmas and I do acknowledge it, I was willing and ready to work. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't have class on Christmas Day. And that's not to take anything away from the holiday itself, but it's just to say that, you know, the struggle is continuous. The work that we do is continuous. And so I was prepared to continue. That being said, I'm going to sort of have to lump everything into today, which, you know, is no problem, but we have a lot to do, right? Hold on. Let me make sure you can still hear me. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir, we still can hear you.
Okay, perfect, because I'm mounting my camera. And I just want to make sure that I thought I hit the mute button.
It's all right.
All right, good. All right, so the work that we're doing is continuous. And so we have to stay focused on that. And I was prepared to do that. So while I'm happy to be back, I was sad to be away for the holiday. Let me let you see me if I can get this to do what it's supposed to do. Okay. All right. And a couple of things before you see me. Let me get the readings for you. So those of you who are just joining us, or, you know, were offset by the, delay of the holidays, I'm going to go back to the readings. And I started last week with a film called Cuba and African Odyssey, where we talked about the most important assassination of the 21st century, which was that of Patrice Lumumba. Okay, so if you remember, if you were following, you know that I posted a film along with several other documents. Okay, and so we are I'm gonna let you see me and say hi, and then we're gonna go right to just a brief clip in the film. Okay. And why am I going to this film, Cuba and African Odyssey? I'm going to the film because of the simple fact that, let me make sure I have the right one. Okay. I'm going to the film for the simple fact that the film depicts a very important time in our history. We know that Pan-Africanism has its highest expression on the African continent. And it is, in fact, the very young Patrice Lumumba who becomes the subject of a very important issue, which is the ability of African people to control the resources of the world. This goes right to the heart of why it has been so difficult for Pan-Africanism to be experienced by us uninterrupted, uneclipsed. My camera like keeps falling down. Uneclipsed. And it has to do with resources, right? We are working as people who are members and ambassadors of I Love Black People. We are working to secure the freedom of movement, freedom of adequate businesses and services, and access to that for African people, free of racism and xenophobia. But one of the main and critical things that some of the theorists that you read in the readings that I gave point out is that, particularly Amilcar Cabral, is that none of this can be fully realized if African people do not deal with the material issue. And we deal with the material issue in I Love Black People because it's access to, right, resources, access to freedom to move about, access to the resources that are inherently, some will believe, that are inherently ours because they are on the African continent. And so Patrice Lumumba is sort of like, I don't want to say the sacrificial lamb, but very symbolic of that struggle, because he comes into leadership at a time where the Cold War exists between Western nations, and it interrupts the unity in one of the most important regions in the world, which is the Congo and the Congo Free State, okay? Side note, whoever controls the Congo controls a bulk of the world's resources. That being said, while we think, who should care that we, that we're Pan-Africanist and that we should unify and that we should come together and have access to, fuller access to resources so that we can live the full and free life? Well, everybody cares. Everybody who doesn't have those resources in their part of the world cares, okay? Why? Because to interrupt the unity of African people, and someone posted this very, there's a scholar who was talking about this, the interest the rest of the world has in keeping Africa marginalized and destabilized, right? I saw that in one of the groups, someone posted it just recently. And I was like, this is spot on, because I have used that clip myself. In all the work that you hear being done around Africa, most of it is still consistent with the idea that Africa has to be marginalized in order for Europe and the Western world to thrive. You see my holiday spread here. I don't want you to see that. Anyway, the point is that we should understand that very often Pan-Africanism, African unity, has been interrupted as a result of everyone else's interest in the resources that inherently belong to African people, okay? And so while what they have first dibs and access to African resources, and I love what the Congo, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo did recently. They're in the process of saying no foreign mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo any longer, but that's a long time coming. But most of the time, it has been the way that we know it to be, and it has been the way that we're going to look at it in terms of Patrice Lumumba and his scenario in the Democratic Republic, in the Congo Free State, okay? So I'm just gonna go to a clip and I'm going to then explain a little bit more after that. You're probably seeing me too close anyway, so I'll have a chance to adjust that. So what are we looking at? We're looking at Cuba and African Odyssey. We're not fixated on Cuba. This is just a good documentary we use from the beginning, various tools, visual and otherwise, to hone in on the point, which is our condition. So we are just using this. Cuba, yes, is notable because it is the only nation that has been a consistent supporter of African liberation and liberation movements on the continent. However, the focus is always on us African people. The focus is always on us Black people, right? So don't get sidetracked by that, the title of it. This is just a good film that chronicles, right, African liberation movements and what was happening in that moment in time, okay? So we don't wanna fixate. So I'm gonna go right to it and share my screen. Well, first of all, I'm gonna turn my camera off and then I'm gonna go to it.
July 1991 in Havana. It is Nelson Mandela's first trip outside Africa since his release from 27 years of prison. But why would the legend of struggle against oppression decide that the first person he wants to thank for helping to end apartheid is Fidel Castro, the very man who is regarded in the West as an oppressor of his own people? Fidel Castro and 500,000 Cubans took part in the African wars, which ultimately ended colonialism. This little-known story began in 1960, only a year after Cuban revolutionaries triumphed. Their struggle had captured people's imagination, and the young feisty leaders, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, emerged from 3 years of guerrilla war as heroes. The wave of independence in Africa was spreading like wildfire. That year alone, 17 African countries gained independence, and 30 others started their revolutionary armed struggle. African revolutionaries were looking to the Cubans as a model for their own independence. Cuba was living proof that David could beat Goliath.
Esta gran humanidad ha dicho basta y ha echado a andar, y su marcha de gigantes ya no se detendrá hasta conquistar la verdadera independencia. Quería referirme específicamente al doloroso caso del Congo, único en la historia del mundo moderno, que muestra cómo se puede burlar con la más absoluta impunidad, con el cinismo más insolente, el derecho de los pueblos.
Che Guevara was revolted, and his speech gave a clear signal that Cuba intended to act. The case of Patrice Lumumba in the Congo was symbolic of how African independence would be crushed by Cold War strategic interests. It was Lumumba's assassination that sparked a new era for many African revolutionaries, and with it started the epic of Cuba and Africa. The Congo, one of the largest and richest countries on the continent. The Belgian colony was demanding immediate independence. Patrice Lumumba, the young articulate clerk, led the movement that negotiated a peaceful solution to end Belgian rule. On June 30th, 1960, King Baudouin arrived in Leopoldville, the capital named after his great-uncle, to hand over power.
Le roi Baudouin était dans une voiture découverte. Il saluait la foule, etc. Un Congolais s'est précipité sur la voiture. J'ai vu les gardes du roi dégainer. Et tout le monde avait peur, se disait il va tuer le roi. Non, il a simplement sorti l'épée du roi de sa gaine. Et il s'est mis à danser avec cette épée. C'est très symbolique ça. C'est comme s'il lui a arraché le pouvoir.
On Independence Day, all the dignitaries assembled in Parliament. King Baudouin was to announce the transfer of power to the new government. Patrice Lumumba had just been elected Prime Minister. But the euphoria of independence did not last long. That same day, Lumumba lit a fire that spread through the entire continent.
L'indépendance du Congo constitue l'aboutissement de l'œuvre conçue par le génie du roi Léopold II.
Le discours du roi Baudouin, qui nous rappelait comment la Belgique nous a sortis de l'esclavage, comment ils ont lutté pour nous sortir des maladies du sommeil et patati patata. Ça a été un choc. Nous ne nous attendions pas à ce rappel malheureux parce que nous estimions que le roi Baudouin n'avait plus de leçons à nous faire ce jour-là.
À ce moment-là, Lumumba se lève, qui n'était pas programmé comme devant parler à ce moment-là. Il se lève et il parle. Il fait un discours très militant.
Combattant de l'indépendance, aujourd'hui victorieux, je vous salue au nom du gouvernement congolais. Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir au matin, midi et soir, parce que nous étions des nègres.
Rappelez-vous comment on traitait le blanc par rapport au noir. Rappelez-vous dans les écoles quelle place nous occupions. Rappelez-vous tout l'apartheid. Alors évidemment, réaction immédiate de toute la délégation belge. D'abord, beaucoup d'agitation pendant que Lumumba parle.
Qui oubliera enfin les fusillades où périt tant de nos frères, ceux qui ne voulaient plus se soumettre au régime d'injustice, d'oppression et d'exploitation.
C'était mal reçu par les Belges, mais nous avons tout à fait répondu à nos aspirations.
Et au moment du dîner, on demande à Lumumba de présenter des excuses. Il ne s'en fait pas. Il présente les excuses en disant « Je pensais que je devais dire un certain nombre de choses, je les ai dites, donc si ça a blessé, je m'en excuse et je demande qu'on tourne la page et que nous puissions voir les choses autrement. » Mais il était trop tard. La majesté était lésée. Et la majesté lésée a décidé le soir même de se venger et tout a commencé.
Lumumba wanted to govern independently, but there were only 30 university graduates in the Congo, so it was agreed that for the next 5 years, Belgium would continue to run the important departments of the new state, including the army. The soldiers felt excluded from the newly acquired freedom. Within days, they started a mutiny, which led to the breakdown of the entire country.
The troops were roaming the streets, all armed, and it was quite a racial problem. The mutineers were there, and they had matiti, that's bushes on their helmet, which was a sign that they were prepared for action, for combat. I can remember one yelling, "Venez, venez, sale flamand." We were all dirty Flemish. That was some expression that meant you were really bad, and we're going to kill you. More stories circulated about killing, rape, pillage, etc. It was, if you will, the Iraq of today.
Le 10 juillet, retenez bien la date, les militaires belges ont occupé l'aéroport de Njili, ici. ils ont organisé l'agression du Congo en disant, puisque les militaires congolais mutinés se sont attaqués aux femmes, aux enfants et aux officiers, la Belgique n'avait plus aucun autre moyen de protéger ses ressortissants que de faire venir des troupes belges le 10 juillet. 10 jours après.
Lumumba immediately turned to the US for support. The United States had never been a colonizing power, and their democratic principles seemed to guarantee support for people fighting for independence. Fidel Castro himself had chosen the US as his first stop for support when his revolution triumphed a year earlier. But like Castro, Lumumba's attitude did not go down well with the Americans.
I was in the lobby of the embassy when this little Congolese clerk came in and he said he wanted 24 visas. He didn't know what a visa was. I said, well, do you have passports to put the visas in? No, patron. He didn't. So I explained to him what a visa was. And I said, why do you need 24? Well, he said, Lumumba is going to the States to see President Eisenhower. I said, oh, that's interesting. Told the ambassador. He said, I'm not aware of it. So he checked, and Eisenhower said, well, if he comes, I'll be here.
Monsieur le secrétaire d'État, c'est avec un réel plaisir que je me trouve aujourd'hui aux États-Unis, pays de démocratie et de liberté, pour prendre contact avec vous.
Lumumba couldn't have made a worse impression on the Secretary of State and his deputy and other people with whom he met there. He threatened, he asked for things, including to have a woman sent around to his room.
The visit was not a success, and it was clear that Washington would not come to his rescue. Just as Lumumba was leaving Washington, Cuba announced the nationalization of US companies, and a trade embargo was immediately imposed on the island. Lumumba, like Castro, soon discovered that the Soviet Union was more than happy to help where the US would not.
À ce moment-là, Lumumba commet probablement la deuxième erreur. Ils prennent la décision, ils font un télégramme adressé à Khrouchtchev pour lui demander l'envoi des troupes de l'Union soviétique pour venir chasser les Belges. Ce télégramme, avant même qu'il ne sorte, est volé au secrétaire de Lumumba par son ancien directeur de cabinet qui s'appelait Kandolo Damien. Larry Devlin s'accapare du télégramme, les transmet au gouvernement américain.
We became aware of it almost immediately, and it came from Congolese sources. That immediately alerted the Americans. I became wide-eyed at that. I said, we have a problem here. He tried to play off the West against the East. It's an old game, but it was relatively new at that time in Africa.
Mais Larry Devlin ne l'a pas pris comme ça, il l'a pris pour dire, voilà, la preuve est là, que le monde est communiste par conséquent. Outre le fait qu'il a insulté le roi des Belges, il est communiste, donc il faut le chasser du pouvoir.
The Congo crisis was becoming more than just a local conflict in faraway Africa. The superpowers were taking a particular interest, especially Moscow, that had recently set up a bureau for aiding anti-colonial liberation movements.
The Soviet Union was eager to help, or at least agreed to help, the legally elected Congolese government. That was in the last days of July, when a squadron of our Ilyushin 14 transport planes, about 10 left for Leopoldville. By the way, they landed in Athens, and the airport, which was partly NATO base, it became a big noise. The whole noise about the Cold War started when we landed there.
It was the first time that there'd ever been Soviets in that part of Africa, at least, certainly not the Congo, and very few in the rest of Africa, because the colonial powers were not desirous of having the Soviets there.
Третий мир в этой войне был полем, так сказать, для охоты. Перевели вам? Полем для охоты. Почему? В Европе границы были забетонированы. Перейти границу означало начать атомную войну, которую никто не хотел. А третий мир, он был как будто без хозяина. Там была возможна свободная охота. Там можно было приобретать влияние.
We believed, and I think it's true, that it was an attempt to hold Congo as a base, especially as a base of minerals for the United States, for the West. We should not forget that the first atomic bomb was done of those uranium found in Congo.
There were only two countries in the world that supplied cobalt at that time, Soviet Union and the Congo. And cobalt
Very
is
important point. Can you all hear me? Because I just paused it intentionally to say one thing. Very important point. Cobalt and coltan are two major resources that come out of the Congo. And whoever has access to it can advance their military technology and prowess. And so this is part of the issue when I speak to resources and how the access of the rest of the world to resources that are inherently and rightfully African and on the African continent can, our attempts at Pan-Africanism can be eclipsed by external forces' desire to possess these resources. So I just wanted to highlight there as they talk about that.
extremely important for jet engines and all sorts of high technology. And we could not get it from the Soviet Union because it was a security commodity. So Congo was our only source.
I suspect that the people in Washington began wondering where are we going to get our cobalt from if the Soviets managed to control that.
The United States deplores the unilateral action of the Soviet Union in supplying aircraft and other equipment for military purposes to the Congo. The Soviet action, which seems to be motivated entirely by the Soviet Union's political designs in Africa. I must repeat that the United States takes a most serious view of this action by the Soviet Union.
Eisenhower fumed about aggressive Soviet support for his opponents. Soviet military aid for Lumumba arrived in the Congo only 1 month after the first Soviet arms shipment had landed in Cuba. To make matters worse, Castro openly declared that he intended to use these weapons to export his revolution. Eisenhower decided to send the CIA into action.
I received a message saying that people in Washington were highly concerned about the activities of the Prime Minister and that they hoped that he would go, it would be a change in the government. The next thing I knew, I received a cable saying that someone by the name of Joe would arrive in Leopoldville, and I was to take my instructions from him. And the instructions were that I was to remove him physically from, in other words, assassinate Lumumba. I asked first, whose instructions are these? And he said, they've come from President Eisenhower. The president wanted this done, and I was to put together these poisons and bring them out to you. One of the poisons was a tube of toothpaste that had poison in it, so that if he'd brushed his teeth with it, that was been the end of the man. All of these things I put in my safe because I didn't want them lying around the office. If somebody may say, may I use your toothpaste? I felt that I had some pretty good operations going, and in the long term, my operations would achieve the objective of removing Lumumba from office, but not killing him.
The Congo plunged into utter chaos. In the confusion, two separate secession movements broke away from Lumumba's government. The country desperately needed to be brought under control.
The United States started to worry about it because the Soviets were backing Lumumba. So President Eisenhower said, well, we may have to use NATO there to keep the Soviets out. But finally, cooler heads prevailed, and they asked the UN Security Council to send a peacekeeping operation to the Congo. President Eisenhower made some very basic policies which are still in existence today. And he said that if there are troubles in Africa, we don't want to have to send troops there, or Europeans should not send troops. It should all be done by the UN.
Lumumba thought that the arrival of the UN peacekeepers would help him bring stability. He was wrong. The UN mission provided the missing ingredient to oust his government. Lumumba had just promoted his personal secretary, Joseph Mobutu, to Army Chief of Staff. Mobutu was to coordinate with the UN troops to stop the country's descent into anarchy. Instead, he turned to Larry Devlin.
Mobutu said that the army was very unhappy with the prime minister because he was turning the army over to the Soviets. He wanted to mount a coup d'etat, but there was one condition. They had to know that they would have the support of the United States government. I had tried and failed to achieve by legal means what they wanted, the United States government wanted. So I stood up and shook his hand. Finally, it took me a while to do this, and said, I guarantee you the support of the United States government. And the coup, he said the coup will take place within a week, and it did.
UN troops were supposed to protect the independence of Congo, but they would not allow the Congolese troops, which were loyal to Lumumba, to operate. The mission of the United Nations troops was misused to topple the regime of the government of Lumumba, or at least not to protect Lumumba.
Les troupes des Nations Unies ici vont encercler la résidence du Premier ministre. Sans aucun mandat, sans aucune autorisation, il y a une crise interne, les Nations Unies s'interposent et vont mettre le Premier ministre en résidence surveillée.
Lumumba's supporters organized his escape. He was sneaked out of his house, bundled up in the back of a government car.
Le bruit s'est répandu que Lumumba était parti de chez lui. On a commencé à le chercher. Mobutu a demandé aux Nations Unies de lui donner des hélicoptères. On l'a poursuivi. On l'a arrêté. On les a mis dans un hélicoptère. On l'a ramené ici, ligoté, comme un vulgaire bandit.
On Mobutu's orders, Patrice Lumumba was sent to his death. It was barely 6 months since Congo celebrated independence.
C'était terrible. Vous enlevez celui qui est le flambeau, l'icône, tout d'un coup, comme ça, et d'une façon très barbare, en utilisant les mains africaines. Alors c'était frustrant, c'était écœurant, c'était un appel à l'insurrection populaire. Il faut venger cela. Ce pays est à nous et je vais me battre pour lui. C'était l'étincelle qui m'a fait conduire sur le chemin du maquis, de la guérilla.
A witch hunt tracking down Lumumba's followers started in the capital. One by one, the Lumumbas fled to the safe haven across the river in Brazzaville. They organized themselves into an armed rebellion led by the 23-year-old Laurent Kabila. Lumumba's assassination resonated throughout the world. The shock was felt clearly in Cuba, where a large percentage of the population traces its origins back to the Congo. Cuba's younger revolutionary leaders were appalled. The island declared a 3-day official mourning in honor of Lumumba's memory.
Bajo la bandera de las Naciones Unidas en el Congo fue asesinado Lumumba.
Okay, so I just wanted to, for those of you who didn't have the chance to watch that, that was the footage, and I hope it was impactful and you got the important point of it all, which is that Patrice Lumumba was responsible for, in essence, attempting to unify the Congo and the Congolese people. What ends up happening is that the Congo goes from being in the hands of Belgian colonial or imperialist forces to being a Congo with many Western hands in it. Okay, so it goes from Belgian colonialism to international colonialism with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And it's very important to understand what he was trying to do: unify the Congo so that the people could benefit the most from the resources that it produced. So the Congolese people, so the African people that are there and live there would benefit most from what the nation had to offer. That being said, it wasn't disconnected from the ideas of someone whose work we read in the group of texts you had, which is Nkrumah. Because Nkrumah talks about the independence of an individual African nation not being just one victory, but it ultimately being a step in the total liberation and independence of the African continent and the total unification of the African continent and its people spread abroad. So Patrice Lumumba is sort of like a not even a cautionary tale, just sort of an exhibition of how African unification is so challenging to the rest of the world. It is a challenge to the rest of the world because it means that they no longer can take what is inherently what inherently belongs to African people, right? So I started with Amos Wilson saying that if people can get us to not love each other, come together, then this works out great for them because we are vulnerable to exploitation. We are vulnerable to all the isms, racism, xenophobia, so on and so forth. But our unity is what we achieve, what we strive for. And our unity, yes, says that African people must be provided for first. And the reason why I'm harboring on the point of provided for first, meaning material, concrete in a measurable way, is because I want to move on to Amilcar Cabral, who is also in this film. If you watch the entire film, you know that it eventually gets around to several African nations, one of them being Guinea-Bissau. And you have the readings from Amilcar Cabral in the last set, which was quite a few documents. I hope people got a chance to get through all of them, but you were giving identity and dignity in the context of struggle. And that is by Amilcar Cabral, who was from Guinea-Bissau. He also was one of the young revolutionaries and Pan-Africanists on the continent of Africa at that time. When the whole continent is struggling with imperialist forces or struggling to rid itself of imperialist forces on the continent. Amilcar Cabral is quite complex, but important. And I want to say complex, but important because of all the revolutionaries and Pan-Africanists of his time. He captured the nuance around Pan-Africanism the nuance with regard to culture. And I get this question a lot as I teach this, about what can we do about, it's easy to talk about unity, but what can we do about ethnic conflict? All the divisions that we have. How do we get to Pan-Africanism, whether it's ethnic conflict on the continent, whether it is other isms or other issues that we have in the diasporas. And Amilcar Cabral speaks to this the best in terms of a model of how we move towards unification. There can be, and I'm positing this as a solution, there can be a common struggle that we have that is a unifying force for us, okay? Hence the people of Guinea-Bissau, okay? Prior to colonialism and imperialism coming to the African continent, very likely and were many different ethnic groups, right? The colonialists, the imperialists cut these false borders, right? So they divide people who are the same and force people together who are not ethnically the same, okay? In order to claim their colonial territory. That being said, in the struggle in Guinea-Bissau, one of the few West African nations that engaged in an armed struggle or a semblance of an armed struggle, because if you understand the military logistics of that struggle, you know that it was sort of a tactic, their armed struggle, to weaken the Portuguese imperialist forces, as opposed to a straight out fight head on with the Portuguese. That being said, he recognizes the diversity, the ethnic diversity of the people pre-colonial period or pre-imperialist presence in Guinea-Bissau. And therefore he talks about just the regular man and just the regular women who are willing to take up arms in defense of their people, having a common experience of engaging in this struggle, and that being a new unifying factor for them. The direct language is that the struggle will prepare the people for the victory to, for the first time, function as a nation of one people. Because one of the things people don't understand about African people, about Black people, is that this thing around race is a European thing imposed on us. So this idea that being Black, simply being Black, means that we all think the same, that we're, that we're homogeneous, that we're all the same. That is not true. We hold the world's diversity. Okay, we are the creators of the world's diversity. All the world's people come from us first. That being said, we are responsible. We are the most diverse people coming from the African continent in our homeland. Okay, so we hold the diversity. So we're not all the same. That being said, the colonial forces force us into a situation where we have a common oppressor, a common ism, being racism, being colonialism. Okay, but we are the oldest friends, we are the oldest enemies, we are the oldest family members. Okay, we have been on this earth next to each other the longest, okay, of any of the world's inhabitants. So let me say it another way. African people have been on the African continent Earth for 200,000 to 300,000 years. Europeans who create this construct of race have only been on the earth for 7,000 years. Do the math, okay? 7,000 years, 7 to 8. Let's give them 7 to 8. We have been here on the earth for 200 to 300,000 years together. And it's only been in the last 50,000 years or so when we come out and cross the Barren Straits, because yes, Native Americans are people who migrated from the African continent. it's only since we have migrated outside of the African continent that we have started to see ourselves, put it this way, it's only since we migrated outside of the African continent that you can talk about the origins or Native Americans or other groups of people, right? So we migrate to the four corners of the world ultimately. All right. So all the world's indigenous people are Black initially because we are migrating to the four corners of the world. All right. So all of humanity has its origins in Africa. Okay. So we are the first neighbors to each other. We are the first friends. We are the first enemies. We are all of that. Okay. This thing called racism is recent, the last 400 to 500 years. All right. That's been since European imperialists have come out of Europe and created this social and physical construct called race, right? So this means nothing to African people who are on the continent and still on the continent, okay? This means nothing to us. These are all things that are created outside of us, meaning racial construct, right? It's very young in the world. If you look at the larger historical picture, it's a very recent thing in terms of human history. So it has interrupted us and given us a common cause, but it has not been our age-old affliction. It didn't exist. Colonial borders did not exist for African people, right? Racial ideology did not exist for us. It has been imposed on us, okay? So when we find ourselves in a situation like having to fight imperialist nations like the Portuguese, like the Belgians, like the French, like the British, coming together with people who are ethnically different is a new thing. It is a first time for us, okay? However, it has had such an impact on our reality, materially and otherwise, materially, culturally, and otherwise, that it is necessity. It is out of necessity that we struggle against them, okay? Our main way and solution to struggling against imperialism and colonialism is unity. And Emil Cabral, and I hope I'm not making this too complex for people, but Emil Cabral discusses this with an awareness of all that I said, okay? He understands how old we are as a people who are indigenous to the continent of Africa. He understands our cultural and ethnic diversity. He understood the present situation in terms of European imperialism in Africa. And with that understanding, he says, we have to respect that we were always a diverse people. And for the first time, probably in our history, we have to come together to face a common affliction that has been imposed on us, being racism, colonialism, imperialism, right? That being the case, he talks about this common struggle, right? Going through something together, being a unifying force for us, okay? So he is a standout because part of how he believes we can do this is, one, to revisit history, which is what we're doing, two, reclaiming our culture, okay? And that is a breakaway from the traditional Marxist-Leninist line, okay? And I don't want to go too deep in it to confuse people, but let me just say this. Many of the people that you will hear about in terms of our leadership on the African continent ideologically come from a school of thought that is from the Eastern Bloc, from the Soviets, from Russia, from the Eastern Bloc, Eastern European ideology. Marxist-Leninist is what I'm referring to. That pretty much basically says people can struggle for their liberation on a material level, devoid of culture, devoid of history. But Amilcar Cabral, although aware of that, said, no, for the African person, for the Black person, part of our liberatory process means we must reclaim our history. We must reclaim our culture, okay? See, what we should understand is that when we adopt the strategies and tactics of other groups of people, know that those people are not talking about us and we're not thinking about us African people when they came up with those strategies. They're talking about their own situation, Marx and Lenin, right? So sure, we can take little things from them in terms of assessing the material conditions that imperialism and colonialism has imposed on us. However, when it comes to the importance of history, when it comes to the importance of culture, we need not take their advice on that, because part of how we are colonized as African people, Black people spread throughout the world, is to attack our culture, is to erase our history, right? And so in order to reclaim ourselves, in order to liberate ourselves, we must invoke the history. We must reclaim the culture. But we also must go a step further and understand that as we engage in this common struggle, that yes, we have a history, a diverse history, and this process is a unifying process. I hope I'm making myself clear. So what Amilcar Cabral brings to the conversation is the fact that with this ethnic diversity that I know we address xenophobia here in I Love Black People, with that understanding that that is something that affects us, right? We have South Africa is a perfect example of where xenophobia is experienced, right? But we've got to understand that we can't engage in xenophobia, right? Because the condition of African people in South Africa is very similar to the condition of African people in West Africa, in East Africa, in the DRC and the surrounding countries. Why? Because imperialism has come and exploited all of us materially in terms of resources and our bodies as well, right? So the extraction of African people from the continent into slavery is part of that exploitation, right? Extraction of the resources of the African continent and in our communities, even abroad outside of that, is part of exploitation, right? So we have been utilized physically as human beings and materially in terms of resources in our indigenous locales. I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna give you just a little clip on Amilcar Cabral so you can hear this in motion and see just what the line or the position Amilcar Cabral held on this very issue was firsthand. So let me just do this real quick. Hold on. Let me get it to that point. One moment. And I don't want to, let's see. Hold on 1 second. So I'm just going to show you a little clip. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is Amilcar Cabral, so you can get some understanding of who he was visually, so you know the face, but also just his direct philosophy as it pertains to African liberation and Pan-Africanism, okay? Okay.
Sudamérica es primero un país socialista en el hemisferio occidental, es en realidad una grande promesa, una grande esperanza para todos los pueblos que luchan contra el imperialismo.
Pero ya había un antecedente de América cuando se había entrevistado en el recorrido que hace el Che por distintos países que llega a Conakry y tiene la oportunidad de hablar con América. Y el Che dice que uno de los movimientos de liberación más serios que hay en ese momento y de más posibilidad en ese momento es el movimiento de la liberación de la colonia de Guinea-Bissau y Cabo Verde.
Après les grands discours de Fidel Castro, Amilcar Cabral fait un discours remarquable. Il a caractérisé, je m'appelle ça, très bien la situation en Afrique, en partir de son propre pays, en parlant des ethnies, en parlant d'états de pauvreté, d'exploitation, pour justifier l'idée de continuer la lutte armée, c'est parce qu'il n'y avait pas autre voie, parce que les grandes puissances s'opposaient à l'indépendance des colonies portugaises, par exemple.
For years, Amilcar's struggle was not of much consequence. But when the guerrillas started capturing territory, suddenly the importance of this neglected colony became evident. For Portugal, much more was at stake in Guinea-Bissau. This tiny colony could prove to be the empire's Achilles heel.
Y se liberaba Guinea-Bissau, y así se demostró después. Se desprendía la liberación del resto de los países de habla portuguesa que colonizados. Entonces, allí estaba el eslabón más flojo que tenían de la cadena, desde el punto de vista de los portugueses. No podían permitir, tuvieron hasta que hicieron todo el esfuerzo para no permitir que se desgajara ninguna de las colonias, y mucho menos Guinea, que iba a ser el ejemplo del resto de las colonias para su liberación.
Il n'avait pas beaucoup de richesses. À ce moment-là, la Guinée devait recevoir de l'argent du Portugal. C'était un pays où on faisait l'agriculture, pas plus. L'agriculture arriérée, on faisait la Guinée. Tandis que ce n'était pas le cas en Angola, où il y avait des immigrés qui étaient des commerçants, des hommes d'affaires. C'était des richesses de l'Angola et de Mozambique qu'ils voyaient, parce que la Guinée n'ont rien fait.
The Portuguese were aware of their weakness, but they held a trump card. The government leased a strip of land on the Azores Islands to the US Defense Department. That airbase was used to protect American allies in the East, like Israel and Saudi Arabia. But the lease was renewable annually, so Portugal had every intention to use the Azores airbase as a bargaining chip.
Well, under the fascist regime of Portugal, Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau were part of Portugal. So the idea of giving up these colonies was unthinkable for that regime. So if we went to them and said, look, you must get out of Angola, we'll be very upset with you and all that, they might well have cut us out of the Azores. So NATO and the Cold War was far more important to us. There was a special law about not allowing U.S. arms given to Portugal to use them in Africa, but they did violate it, and we didn't do anything about it. In fact, we did not cut them off, even though we knew it, they were using them.
Nous n'avons pas même voulu nous mettre dans cette guerre-là entre l'Est et l'Ouest. Nous n'avons pas voulu, non. Mais malgré que beaucoup de gens disaient que ce sont des communistes, beaucoup de gens disaient ça, mais on n'avait pas de preuves. Comme disait Amilcar, nous étions des nationalistes africains, sans option idéologique.
Amilcar knew that it would be difficult to avoid labeling his movement, and having Cuban fighters would do little to dispel the belief that they were firmly allied to the Eastern Bloc. But he had a vision and a very clear strategy as to how to fight his battle for independence.
Es decir, que Amilcar no llega pidiendo, deme hombre, mándeme hombre, ¿no? Teníamos la idea de que habíamos sacado ya del Congo, de que venían a venir más tropas de cubanos a ayudar a Amilcar. Y en aquel momento Amilcar no quería más tropas de cubanos.
Son los guineanos que tienen que luchar. Y tú metes un batallón ahí, va a ser el batallón y no los canguros. Y tienen que aprender mediante la lucha, prepararse para la victoria. Es una idea muy, aunque fuera un poco más larga la lucha, era una idea muy interesante de ir forjando en medio de la lucha la nación. Hay que forjar una nueva nación, además tribus diferentes, solo la lucha por unirla.
Che's defeat in the Congo was still a fresh wound, and Fidel began to consider how his help could be more effective. This time, the bulk of Cuban support came in the form of artillery experts, doctors, and technicians. Soldiers would go only if requested.
They also took some lessons from the debacle in Congo. In Guinea-Bissau, the involvement was quite different. It was more of, in a good sense, technical nature of helping local forces of PAGC, the army, especially helping in those specialities when they hadn't got enough expertise, you see, to fight Portuguese. So it's more of, in the good sense, supportive role, you see.
Amilcar had no illusions about his capacity to defeat the mighty Portuguese Empire. He wanted to wear them down in order to get them to the negotiating table.
En la conversación que tiene Amílcar conmigo, en el frente, él me explica, se basaban en no atacar los cuarteles con intenciones de tomarlos, porque no había suficiente fuerza ni condiciones en ese momento para eso. Lo que quería era desangrar, hacerle bastante baja al enemigo y hacerle la vida imposible con ese tipo de combate. Hasta que se le haría la vida imposible en los cuarteles.
The war escalated, and the Portuguese sent 22,000 more soldiers. Amilcar's demoralization tactics had worked. The Portuguese felt trapped. Veteran captains from the colonial army in Guinea-Bissau decided to take the initiative in their own hands. It was they who overthrew the dictatorship, creating the Carnation Revolution in Portugal. And within months, the Portuguese colonial empire crumbled like a house of cards.
In this liberation movement, there was no military victory. Never. And they did not destroy the colonial machine, but they created, even vis-à-vis Algeria and France for that matter, they created such a situation that before getting victory, they force the enemy to retreat, to come to some compromise. Usually it's in the form, it's compromise. In the essence, it's the victory of the liberation forces. That's exactly happened in each and every country.
The Portuguese army left Guinea-Bissau in October 1974. But the man who pushed the empire over the brink was not there to witness the fruits of his struggle. Amilcar Cabral was killed a year earlier by members of the Portuguese secret police. The who's who of revolutionaries gathered at Amilcar's tomb. Beside Fidel Castro stood Agostinho Neto, the leader of Angola's liberation movement. Cuba had for years been supporting Neto's movement.
Okay, so that gives you a little synopsis of Amilcar Cabral and his leadership in light of the struggle for liberation. There was actually one other point that I wanted to make, but I sort of forgot. So you saw in that little clip that essentially when the Cubans and Fidel Castro gave support to the struggle in Guinea-Bissau, they essentially, Amilcar Cabral essentially told them that, you know, the people of Guinea-Bissau would have to struggle and fight this struggle on their own. While they could assist militarily with supplies and strategic advice, no Cuban fought the war in Guinea-Bissau. It was fought by men and women, and this is one of the notable struggles. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to get into that, but this is one of the struggles on the African continent where women are armed militants in the struggle as well. And I actually years ago had the opportunity to meet one of the women who actually fought in the liberation struggle in Guinea-Bissau. That being said, these are regular people who decided that they would do what Nkrumah talked about, being armed struggle as the highest expression of ideological warfare, essentially taking up arms to advance your ideological interests, right? And which was freedom and nationhood for a people who had been colonized. That being said, that's a notable case because, because Amilcar Cabral deals with the issue of ethnic difference and ethnic diversity, which we experience in a multitude of ways as we navigate the world. Whether it's, I see some familiar faces, so it surprised me as we navigate the world. So that is something that he is specific and very notable for, because so many of our African leadership are very staunch Marxist Leninists and do not get into the issue of history and culture, as though it does not matter for African people. And most of all, it is important for us. Example, just before I go, because I can't cover everything that you read in this session. So I'm just leaving you with some of the most important notes on what you watched and what you read. Example, we started with the case of Patrice Lumumba. And in the case of Patrice Lumumba, you have Mobutu Sese Seko, right after the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, making it illegal to speak the history of the Liberation Day, the speech that Lumumba gave on December 12th, making it illegal to talk about the attempt to unify the Congo and its people. He was erased, Lumumba, from the history books. He was erased from the national memory. To speak it, to recall it, to teach it, just like in the Western Hemisphere right now, this whole thing about critical race theory, if you teach the true history, it's somehow, a challenge, as opposed to teaching history as it took place. But that's what happened in the Congo. There was an attempt to rewrite the history, to erase Patrice Lumumba, because Pan-Africanism, the attempt to unify African people, was that notable and strong. How I learned about Patrice Lumumba many years ago is because I was part of an exhibit called Patrice Lumumba in Urban Arts. The people began to tell the story from the time of the Day of Independence, where Lumumba gives his speech and the Belgians are present, and he says, my Congolese brothers and sisters, victory, we have victory and you've suffered. From the time he gives that speech, which slated him for assassination, all the way until he is actually assassinated, the people began to paint that story in pictures, okay? Because of the fact that it had been erased from the written history. But part of the Congo liberating itself was to revisit the story of Patrice Lumumba, who had a gallant attempt to unify the Congo and its people and let them benefit the most from what the Congo had to offer, as opposed to it being exploited by a multitude, Belgians first, and then under Mobutu, because of the decisions he made, now moved towards international colonialism, where the United States, #1 on the list, and many other Western nations had their hands in the Congo and still have their hands in the Congo, extracting the resources. So that's a perfect example of how our history for African people cannot be erased or cannot be excluded from the liberatory process. Culture cannot be excluded from the liberatory process, meaning language, cultural norms, all of that, because part of our colonization required for Europeans to what? Erase our culture, right? You don't speak indigenous African languages. You speak their Western languages, right? You are punished in schools in Africa for speaking your indigenous language and not French or not English, right? And adopting their colonial languages. So that has an impact on our psyche, on our whole ideation, on how we see the world, our worldview. And so for us, reclaiming those things is essential to the liberatory process, and it's essential to Pan-Africanism. Okay. I'm gonna stop right there because okay, someone is telling me, all right, I'm gonna take a picture of that. I'll read that quote. I can't do it now. But somebody's saying Brian Parks is saying that. Okay. So I'm stopping there. So sorry I can't get to all the other, but I don't want to go over, time to a great extent. I'm over 15 minutes. Right, I agree with you. I agree with you, Brian Parks.
Oh.
Can you put it in the general chat right now, Mr. Parks? Right, I agree with you so much. Thank you for sharing that quote. Actually, I can share it in the group afterwards. So administrators don't like cut me out at the end of this too quickly. Yeah, so yes, I use Amos Wilson just to frame our discourse for today, because we don't really understand how invested the rest of the world is in the marginalization of African people. Okay. And so that should make us work that much harder for our unification. I'm just going to stop there. Yes, Garvey and Du Bois, I think they're self-explanatory. What I'll do is I'll add some additional information into the group. So moderators, could you just let us, communicate just a little longer in this group so I can share some more, and maybe I'll probably put a couple of voice notes on just important points on Garvey and Du Bois. Du Bois is, none other than William Edward Bookhart Du Bois. And he is the person who would establish, as we covered earlier in the course, the Pan-African Congresses, very important congresses, the continuous congresses. If you notice in the last readings, I actually give you the document which covers the congresses from the 1st to the 5th Pan-African Congresses, okay? And its resolutions. I'll go back to make sure it's there. If it's not, I'll put it there. There are a couple of other documents that were in your last readings, like the need for a union government for Africa, Kwame Nkrumah, important. also the declaration and resolutions for the first conference of independent African states. It all speaks to how organized bodies did what we are doing with regard to Pan-Africanism and continental unity, okay? So you just need to know that we're not doing the work that we're doing for the first time. And so we have to invoke this, just speaking to my point that we've got to invoke history. We've got to invoke culture, right? We can't afford to reinvent the wheel, right? And it's to our detractors' benefit to make us think that we are doing this for the first time, right? We're not. We've been on this continuous march in the world since we were since we encountered Europeans, since we are ripped from the continent of Africa, since we encountered imperialism in the form that we know it to have racked the continent and decimated the resources, because that's what they're in the process of doing, extracting as much as they can. So we have been on this march. This is a continuous struggle. This has been a continuous march for us. So we've got to invoke that history so that we can get prescription and instruction. That's the most important thing, right? So that we can not have to make some of the same mistakes, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we can apply those things, right, to how we struggle and how we organize ourselves in the context of struggle. I'm going to end there because I could literally go all day, but I'm just going to say I am because we are. Let's keep the conversation going just for a couple more days in this group, because I feel like the holidays sort of eclipsed what we were doing here. And I have a couple of other things that I want to share to wrap up. So I will still put those things in the group, and we can continue to dialogue until, the other cycle starts, okay, which is next week. Somebody said a couple of other things, but I'm gonna, my contact is dr.tyrene, Tyrene.wright, WRIGHT @gmail, if you want to email me directly. You can always still contact me in the context of I love Black people. Yeah, those are the ways. So you can actually directly email me if you want to talk to me. The text on Booker T. Washington in Africa, that's a book I wrote. You can, if you're in the African continent, I wouldn't suggest you buying the book or anything like that. The book is about to come out again, but you have some of the critical chapters in the cases that I shared in the group in its entirety. So that's there, right? The African exclusion measure and the Liberian crisis, okay? Yeah, so, well, I can't write it right now because of the way I have my device positioned. But it's DR, the letter D, the letter R, dot TYRENE, which is my first name, dot WRIGHT, no dot, @gmail.com. Can the administrators, thank you so much. I'm sort of I can't do the hands thing right now because I would have to move, I would have to squeeze the device in order to do that. Sorry, guys. And then can you share the link for the book website, bookertwashingtonafrica.com? For those who are in the States, you can still get it. And it's going to actually be republished, but there are some still early copies available, which some people might want to get that because that's a more raw version of that book. More direct. It's the people's version. Let me just say that. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. Thank you all. And stay safe in the new year. This year has been very interesting. And so I want to wish you all well, and forward ever, backwards never. Okay. All right. I am because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor,
Okay.
for a wonderful lecture. I appreciate
All right, thank you.
Esther, Brian Parks, Esther Dikambi, Jones and Jones, Keenan Palmer, Morgan Moss, Jeffrey Mills. Appreciate all of you guys. Amnezero, Cloudy, Fina, for being with us until this end of the lecture. Joe, Kendinchi, Nicole, J, Monica, we all appreciate it. Alimami Baka, I appreciate all of you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and the first day of 2022. I humbly appreciate all of you. Thank you all.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
Peace.